Hello, everyone. This is Amanda, and not Rita. And you're listening today to I Don't Know Her, the podcast where we talk about women you've probably never heard of, but you should have. So the reason why it's just me today is because we're going to do something a little different today. You may have heard a couple of weeks ago about the man who shot and killed 8 people, 6 of whom were women of Asian descent. And his defense appears to be at this moment in time that he has a sex addiction. And so he decided to take it out on these women. And we've talked a little bit on this show about the intersections of racism and misogyny, and also the exoticizing of women of Asian descent. And so we felt it really was necessary as a show that wants you to know the stories of Asian women, that we revisit them and tell them again. So we hope you join us today and share these stories again with the people in your life, and to remember that Asian women matter too. So I hope you enjoy today. We're going to retell the stories of May Wong and Masako Katsura. I'm going to tell the story of May Wong.
I don't know her.
Oh, good. She was the first Asian American Hollywood movie star.
Oh.
And the first Asian American to have her own television show.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was like way later. May Wong was born, her given name was Wong Liu Song on January 3rd, 1905 in Los Angeles.
1905?
Mm-hmm. She was born just a block north of Chinatown. Her family had emigrated originally to the United States via her grandfather, who moved here from Taishan, China in the 1850s. So, long time in the States.
Mm-hmm.
He actually started a store in Michigan Bluffs, California, where the gold rush had started. There is where Anna's father, Sam Sing Wong, was born in 1858.
Okay.
So her grandfather died pretty young. He was actually doing something very heroic, the opposite of the woman with the bag. He was trying to rescue a woman who'd fallen in a well, and he died.
Oh my gosh.
Trying to help her. And this meant that her father, Anna's father, was on his own at like age 10.
Oh.
So Sam Sing ended up going back to China for a while as a young man, which you can imagine, like, being like 8 or 9 years old. Oh, yeah, you're going to need to go home to where your family is.
Yeah.
So he went back to China, and when he was a young man, he met and married his first wife. Then, I don't know exactly the specifics of how he left that wife, but I don't know if they got a mutual divorce or if he was just peace out.
Okay.
But he left her and moved to the United States, and he met a woman named Gon Toi Lee and married her. And she was originally from Oakland. She was born and raised in Oakland, California.
I love Oakland.
Do you?
Yeah.
I've never been.
Really?
No, I've never even been to San Francisco.
Oh, shit. Okay. I didn't know that.
I know.
For some reason, I thought you had.
Just LA.
LA. Okay.
And the Gon Toi Lee and Sam Sing Wong, they ran a laundromat in Los Angeles. And together they had 8 children.
Whoa.
Anna May was their second child. And so again, her born name, like given name, was Wong Liu Song, which meant frosted yellow willows.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
But they also gave all of their kids Americanized names. And so hers was Anna May.
Okay.
They lived in a really racially mixed neighborhood in LA, which it sounded really cool. If I think about like being born in the early 1900s in Los Angeles in a neighborhood that had Chinese, Irish, German, and Japanese people living there. What an incredible mixture.
Yeah.
So at first, Anna and her older sister, Lulu, had attended public elementary school, but they received vicious bullying and taunting. And that eventually drove them out of school.
I was going to say so much that they left, probably.
Yeah, I want to actually share some of it with you because Anna actually spoke about it.
Okay.
This is what she said. "We tried to walk unconcernedly home from school always with a larger and larger crowd of our tormentors around us shouting, "Chink, chink, Chinaman, chink, chink, Chinaman," yanking our pigtails as they called our straight black braids of hair, pushing us off sidewalks into the street, pinching us, slapping us. Every day was one of torture for us.
Jeez. That's terrifying.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
That's like terrorism.
Yeah.
God, those children, all of them. How are you raised? How could you do?
Why do you think that's okay? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if it was happening to you?
The girls were then transferred, obviously, after all of this. Their mother was like, no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they were transferred into a Chinese Presbyterian mission school in Chinatown, where all of the other students were also Chinese. However, all of their classes were taught in English. But their parents wanted them to know Chinese, so they sent them to a Chinese language school after school.
Okay.
And I have a whole contingent of Russian students where I teach, and they do the same thing. They go to school all day at a school that teaches English, and then in the afternoons they have to go to Russian school. For years, they have to go to Russian school.
Wow.
And at their Russian school, they learn not just the language, but also history and culture and blah, 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 so that they don't lose touch with their homeland.
Wouldn't that be fun for like everybody to do that? Like, what if I had gone to school and then went and learned Latin American history and Spanish after school?
Mm-hmm. And when I used to teach on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, they also did that. There would be Northern Cheyenne like language classes, Northern Cheyenne culture classes, Northern Cheyenne history classes. And I thought, well, this should be just taught in every Montana school, period. Mm-hmm. But like, I thought that was really cool. And I think if you live in an area that has like a predominant population of, let's say, Latin Americans or whatever, I think that public school should then offer those kinds of classes so that the students don't have to go out and do it on their own. So around the time that Anna was in upper elementary school, the film industry was transitioning from being based in New York to being based in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And when that started happening, a lot of films started being filmed right around Chinatown.
Oh, okay.
And she was like stars in her eyes. And she knew by the time she was 9 that that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to be a movie star. So she started studying films. She would like skip school and go to the movie theater. She would skip school and like hang out in the like background of movie sets when nobody was looking.
What?
When she was 11, she knew what she wanted her stage name to be. Honoring both her Americanized and birth names, she settled on Anna May Wong. So Anna May was the name that her parents had given her as her Americanized name, and Wong was her actual first name. Okay. So Anna was obsessed with the film industry. She was constantly begging people to get her on set. She even was nicknamed by like people in the industry because they kept seeing her all the time. Mm-hmm. They called her CCC, or the Curious Chinese Child.
Oh my gosh.
One day, her father had a friend who was actually in the film industry.
Okay. And
one day she was like, "Will you please introduce me to the assistant director of this film that's going on?" And her father's friend did not consult with her father, nothing. And he went and asked, and it was an Alan Nazimova film. And as soon as I read her name, I was like, I know who that is. She's a lesbian. If you've been mentioned at any point as a lesbian in the whole circle of like old Hollywood, I know your name.
She does.
And I was right. She was this Russian actress who was, she had an affair with like a male director, but her long-term partner was a woman.
Oh, okay.
So that actress was filming a movie near her house, and she convinced her dad's friend to let her on set. And she got there and they needed extras. And so she
hustled her way in, huh?
At age 14, got to be in her first film.
Oh, that's cool.
She was just carrying a lantern in the background. But I imagine she was the kind of kid who just kept doing that.
over and over.
She was going to be in every shot possible. So for the next 2 years, she actually worked as an extra. Any chance she could get to be on set, she worked as an extra. And she was like really watching and studying what people did and how to do this thing. And of course, this is silent film time.
Oh, okay.
She became actually so busy with being an extra that she decided to drop out of high school in 1921 to try to actually go for an acting career. She was 16.
Oh, that's young.
Yeah, but here's what she thought, which I actually thought was pretty smart for being 16. She was like, I'm going to give this 10 years, and if it doesn't work out, I'm still young enough to do my thing, to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
And she would be right. She'd only be like 25, 26 when she finished the 10 years. And if she hadn't made a name for herself, she would still be young enough to, whatever, do what she was alternative plan would be.
Mm-hmm.
Within a year, she landed her first big role at age 17. Can you imagine being 17?
No.
She was the star.
Oh my gosh.
She was the star of a movie called The Toll of the Sea. It was, this is kind of convoluted. You know, Madame Butterfly?
Yeah.
That's the stage play that was actually like based on a short story. I don't know. Everybody was plagiarizing. So this movie was loosely based on Madame Butterfly.
Okay.
It was also only the second film ever released in color.
Wow.
So she got that under her belt too.
That's really cool.
And the story centered on an American man who washes up on Chinese shores and then seduces and eventually deserts a virginal young woman. So she played that role. Variety praised her as having extraordinarily fine acting. The New York Times, which I actually read this article from 1920 or whatever, 21.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Times touted her as one of the best parts of the film, saying that her acting was balanced and not overly theatrical. And the reviewer ended by saying she should be seen again and often on the screen.
Nice. Not a bad start.
No, I mean, get out the gate and everybody's like, you're great at this. So after this success, Anna sought out the parts of leading ladies in films. That's what she wanted. But there were a couple of really big obstacles in her way. One, which is something I did not know about, it was called the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882.
I've heard of that. Is it about work?
Mm-mm.
The workers' rights? No.
This act was law until 1943.
Jeez.
What it said is that Chinese and American-born Chinese people, even third generations like Anna May, were not allowed American citizenship. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yikes.
Like,
I recognize the title of that from AP history.
It's like her father was born in California. She was born in California. They're fucking U.S. citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Bananas. And two, and these I did know about, but I didn't really, and I did kind of understand this, but the anti-miscegenation laws. Those were the laws that were put in place to say that white people could never be romantically or intimately involved with a person of color.
That's crazy.
And that even extended to the film industry. You couldn't have like a white actor and another actor of color.
Like even the representation of it. Okay.
Even if, and this is wild, even if like, let's say it was a film that was set in China, even if the characters were both Chinese, if one of them was played by a white person, they could not kiss on screen. Well, that was obviously going to be a big obstacle in her way. Mm-hmm. How can you be a leading lady if you're not allowed to be cast against a white man when they're not allowing men of color to be in leading male roles?
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly why those laws and acts are made in that way, is to block them from proceeding.
Yeah,
doing better things.
They couldn't be part of this industry. Not fully part of it. And obviously it was pretty standard practice to have Asian parts played by white people. Yellow face. It was unheard of to have an Asian man play the part of an Asian man if that part was the hero of the film.
That is so insane.
They could be the leading man if the man was a villain. Right?
My head just went 90 degrees. I was like, are you kidding me?
It was like The Exorcist in here. Yeah. If the leading part was a villain, it could be played by a person of color.
Wow. No uplifting characters for you.
No.
No, you're never going to be the hero.
And in fact, at the time, there was a very famous Asian male actor who was a dreamboat. His name was Sesu Hayakawa. Have you ever heard of him?
Mm-mm.
I hadn't either. He was mentioned a couple of times in relationship to her.
Mm-hmm.
So he had, I think, started before her in the industry. And he was very, like, white women were into him.
I want to see this guy.
And, like, they would flock to the theaters to go watch him on screen. He had this, like, really broody look to him.
Ooh.
And so he later on was nominated for a Best Supporting Actor Oscar, like, way, way, way long after he'd been in the silent films. But he even talked about he was never allowed to, quote, get the girl.
Mm.
So there was no way they would ever have him and Anna May be in the same movie together as the leading roles. It was
That's
just
crazy.
not going to happen. So they often had to be in either supporting roles or roles that were villains.
Mm-hmm.
So Anna May was like, okay, I'm going to throw myself into these supporting roles and I'm going to prove to them how amazing I am. And then eventually they're going to let me be a leading lady. In 1923, she starred in the director Todd Browning's movie called Drifting. And she played the part of an exotic concubine.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a part.
And apparently she had an affair with the director, Todd Browning. And when I thought about that, I was like, because then it followed up with saying it was a scandalous relationship because it was interracial.
Yeah.
And she was underage. I was like, I don't really think that's an affair then. That feels a little icky to me.
It feels a little icky, like you're her boss.
Yeah,
and
you're her
she's
boss.
17.
Yeah. She's
And
a teenage
she's
girl.
a girl, a young girl, impressionable.
So I didn't really
Think that should be called an affair.
No, I don't think that's an affair so much as sexual harassment.
Yeah.
In 1924, she was 19. She played a dragon lady in The Thief of Baghdad. So I had a pretty good idea that I understood the definition of a dragon lady because I've heard it as a stereotype in literature and whatever, but I wanted to make sure I got this right.
Okay.
So a dragon lady is the stereotype of East Asian and occasionally South and Southeast Asian women as strong, specifically deceitful, domineering, and mysterious.
Okay.
So they're basically like liars who manipulate.
Okay.
And so that's what she played as a fucking 19-year-old
Jeez.
in The Thief of Baghdad. But that movie made more than $2 million.
Wow, that's a lot of money back then.
That's a fuck ton of money. It's
Yeah.
1924.
Yeah.
And that made Anna May Wong a pretty recognizable actress at the time. Having made a decent amount of money, though obviously paid less than her white counterparts, she was able to move out of her family's home and get her own place. And she also started to really develop her own sense of style. She was super into the flapper look, and she just sort of ran with that and became like a style icon. She was very well dressed all the time. And she was really smart about that because dressing in the flapper style was uniquely American.
Mm-hmm.
And she was really pushing against this idea that she was foreign.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's not foreign. She's an American citizen. She was born in the United States. But people perceived her as being Chinese.
Yeah. Well, people see they see the other, and they think you had to have come from somewhere else. I've been, I would say, more than 10 times in my life asked when did I get to the States? And I was like, I've never left.
Well, if you count my embryo phase, never.
Never.
Yeah, well, and she also, like, she'd never been outside of the United States. Like, she's an American through and through.
Yeah.
But that's not obviously how white people perceived her.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty incredible. So that year that she was in that really big film, made a lot of money, she decided to create her own production company called Anna May Wong Productions with a business partner, making her one of the first Asian American women to have her own film company But my best guess is that Esther Eng, who you covered on the
Yeah,
very
the
first
very first
episode,
episode.
was probably the first Asian American woman who had her own company. But I couldn't quite tell.
The timelines, yeah.
It was probably either like similar, like close together, or Esther was a little bit ahead. Unfortunately, so Anna May really had this grand plan that what she was going to do is she was going to make these filmed adaptations of Chinese myths, and then she'd be able to star in them, and they would be more positive portrayals of Chinese culture.
I'm assuming the partner had the money, because I was wondering,
she had money too from
herself?
I mean that film made $2 million.
True.
So she had a decent amount of money with her, but and she got paid for all of those extra roles and stuff like that, and the Toll of the Sea, she got paid for that, and she still lived at home, so she wasn't spending a lot of her money.
Very true.
So she had gone in with this, and they didn't say who this person was. I'm assuming it was a man. And they had gone in on this business together, but he was obviously shady, and he stole the money.
No.
She had to dissolve the business and sue him.
Fuck.
So she didn't ever get to make her films that she wanted to make. So she went back to playing supporting roles in movies. This is really interesting. She played Indigenous Native girls in 2 different films.
Okay.
Like, if you see her, you're going to be like,
no.
How? She is like this porcelain, fair-skinned, beautiful woman. Like, she looks like a doll. Like, she is so beautiful. She looks like she looks like she should have been a model and an actress. And she was just tall, so tall, thin,
I think you have a crush on her.
Oh, I could not stop looking at her. I got so distracted when I was trying to do her stuff because I kept looking up her films and watching them because I liked watching her on screen. She was really beautiful and just captivating. So to have her play, like, she just didn't fit the role.
Yeah.
But, again, they didn't care.
No.
They were like, oh, you're an other. You can play any other.
Play anything. Yeah.
She also played Tiger Lily in Peter Pan. And now this is the word that was used at the time. I don't even understand what this means necessarily.
Okay.
An Oriental vamp in a movie called 40 Winks.
Okay. Vamping, a vamp is like sexy.
Yeah.
Oriental vamp.
It'd be a cool band name.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, new band name.
She was continuing to be lauded as a great actress in the reviews of these films. They were like, oh, you've got to pay attention to her. She's amazing. Watch her in anything she's in. But she was getting more and more upset at the kinds of roles that she was getting. She was like, if I'm so good, cast me in something that matters.
Yeah. Or if you're saying keep an eye on her, then put me in a fucking movie with a lead role.
So she tried to do something else. So she set out with a traveling vaudeville circus tour filled with actors.
Okay.
But it was not a success, and she came back to Los Angeles, and she kept being typecast over and over again. So after about 2 or 3 years of being fucking frustrated as hell, she was like, I'm leaving. I'm going to Europe.
Oh.
So in 1928, she left for Europe, and this is what she said at the time. I was so tired of the parts I had to play. There seems little for me in Hollywood because, rather than real Chinese, producers prefer Hungarians, Mexicans, American Indians for Chinese roles. And of course, vice versa.
Yeah.
Anna May was very successful in Europe. And like the section on her time in Europe was very long, and I did not want to talk about all of it because it was like she was in this film and then it did this much money and it did that. And I was like, oh God. So I'm going to just sort of
briefly.
Yeah, like collapse a lot of that.
Okay.
So she was pretty successful in Europe. She even learned to speak fucking German.
Ooh.
Fluently.
That's awesome.
So she spoke Chinese, German, and English.
And English.
I almost said American like a fucking idiot. However,
you caught yourself.
I did. I caught myself. Here's something super frustrating. So she's in Germany doing these roles in German. She's coming from Hollywood.
Okay.
In the German press, they never, ever talk about her being American. She's Chinese. She's like, bitch, I've never even been to China.
Yeah.
Like, it was just bizarre. But she was offered leading roles.
Take what you can.
Yep, she starred in German films and in an operetta, which I assume means she could sing too.
Wow.
And they called her powerful and deeply moving in the German press. So while she was in Germany, she met and became close friends with a woman named Leni Riefenstahl, who I'd never heard of, but I found out was an actress who had ambitions to be a director and eventually became a very successful director.
Okay.
So maybe someday I'll talk about Leni Riefenstahl.
It's quite a name.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Anna May also met Marlene Dietrich.
She did.
Doesn't she come up all the time
She
for
does.
us?
Yeah.
Someday I'll just have to do her. So the three of them forged a friendship together. And this often fueled rumors of...
that they were in a relationship.
Lesbianism!
Dun, dun, dun.
Which, unfortunately, because Anna May was Asian American, fed into that stereotype as like being deceitful, because obviously being gay itself was a deceitful, deviant behavior. So that wasn't great for her reputation or her career. And of course, it didn't really affect Marlena's.
Really?
Like Marlene Dietrich was a high-powered star. However, there's a whole situation with the fact that the studios owned actresses. That's real shitty.
Mm-hmm.
In 1929, Anna May played the second to the lead in against this woman named Gilda Gray in a film called Piccadilly. Anna totally stole the show. She completely upstaged her co-star, and she walked away as the most memorable part of the movie. She played this very sensual, sexual woman in the film, of course. Mm. And the filmmakers had even planned to include a scene of her kissing her white co-star.
Oh.
But it was cut before the film was released because it had garnered so much controversy. But this film was eventually restored and has become known as one of her best performances. So Anna then starred in her first talkie called The Flame of Love. She actually recorded it. Are you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
In French, English, and German.
The same movie in 3 different languages?
Yeah.
Holy crap. Yikes.
Like the amount of obstacles that she jumped over to try to prove herself is just incredible. So that same year, this is like a kick in the fucking face.
What?
That same year, Paramount Studios was scouting for great European talent. And despite the fact that Anna May was American, they were discovering her in European cinema.
Okay.
So they wanted to sign her. They saw her and they were like, you need to come into our films. You're great. And she was really reluctant. She's like, I don't know if I want to go back to the United States.
Well, I would have that mistrust because of how everything was going against her. And then too, that person stole money from her.
And she wasn't getting the roles she wanted. Mm-hmm. So they promised her that she would be given lead roles and the top billing.
Okay.
So that means she would be the first name on the poster.
Oh, wow.
And the first name on the credits. Like she would be the main. So she decided to return to the States. That was a deal she couldn't turn away. The year she returned, her mother was hit by a car and killed in front of their house.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that awful?
That is awful.
And Anna May moved back into her family's home and was taking care of her younger siblings financially and emotionally. And she was like paying for them to go to school and stuff. So she had this like terrible stuff going on in her personal life. Mm-hmm. And she was still trying to rise in her stardom. You know, she really wanted this role. And Paramount kept their promise. She was the top billed actress in a starring role. However, the role was yet another stereotypical depiction of Asian women. Mm. She played the vengeful daughter of Fu Manchu in Daughter of the Dragon.
Okay.
It was the one and only time she was able to star alongside an Asian actor, Sesu Hayakawa.
Oh, they were in a movie together. Okay.
They were the villains.
Oh, okay.
Even though she was considered the star of the show, get this shit. She's the star of the show, top billed name. She's on the poster. This huge picture of her is the main picture. However, she's like painted green and looks evil. It's not great. But she's the biggest. Most important. She got paid $6,000, while Sesu made $10,000, and their white male counterpart, who was in the film for just 23 minutes, was paid $12,000.
Oh my gosh.
The layers.
Outrageous. Just outrageous. That they don't even value you.
Why make her top billing and then not pay her top pay?
Yeah.
I mean, this is still the problem in Hollywood today. That's
Absolutely.
why, Michelle Williams is like out there talking about equal pay, because actresses are still getting totally fucked over. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the reason why Michelle Williams is the one who's talking about that shit is, did you ever hear about that story with her and Mark Wahlberg?
Yeah. How much less did she make than him?
Free. So they had signed up to play these roles. They got paid their paychecks, and then they had to go back and do reshoots. And I think it was because one of the co-stars died.
Okay.
I can't remember what had happened exactly. And they had to reshoot some of these scenes. Michelle Williams went back and did it for fucking free because they didn't tell her they would pay her anything else. Mark Wahlberg got like $10 million.
Jeez. What the fuck? No, thank you.
So long history of this idiot shit.
Yeah.
Nonetheless,
she persisted.
Yes, she did. And Anna May was actually fairly famous as an actress. She's regularly working in big films. She's got top billing. So she decided to use her fame to bring attention to some issues that she cared about. One is that at the time, Japan was aggressive towards China, was like invading, and there was lots of shit going on. And they had invaded Manchuria at the time, and so she was very critical of Japan. So she had come out publicly and was really talking about that. And she was also coming out publicly and like writing articles and doing interviews to talk about the negative stereotypes of Asian people in films. Mm. And she said this, which I think is brilliant. Why is it that the screen Chinese is always the villain? And so crude a villain. Murderous, treacherous, a snake in the grass. We are not like that. How could we be, with a civilization that is so many times older than the West? Mic drop.
Yeah.
That reminded me of that thing that Elizabeth Parachovich said. If you're so civilized, you've got so many years of civilization, then how come you're treating us this way?
Right.
Her next role would end up being one of her most famous. In fact, I would say the most famous role she ever had. She starred opposite Marlene Dietrich. She played the part of a Chinese sex worker. They were both sex workers, to be fair.
Okay.
Marlene's character was too. Her nickname was Shanghai Lily.
Oh.
I know, I'm side-eyeing that racism right there. But Anna played the part of a Chinese sex worker in the movie that they were in together called Shanghai Express. It all takes place on this like train. It reminds me of that movie. What is that movie?
I don't know.
I don't remember. Just did a remake of it. It's like the Oriental Express. Is that what it's called?
Maybe. I don't know.
And I'm not sure if this is the same as that one because I've never seen any of those versions.
I've heard of Shanghai Express.
Yeah. Because it was also called the Oriental Express, right? Are they the same films?
Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. Obviously, I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was originally made with Marlene Dietrich and Anna May Wong and then remade again in like I think that was like the 50s and then it was remade again. I wouldn't be surprised. So they're in this movie together and I'll tell you what, I'm going to show you a scene later after we're done recording because the sexual chemistry between Marlene Dietrich and Anna May Wong was enough to get my entire body lit on fire. I was definitely having like moment. Hot flashes. I rewatched it fucking 6 times, I think. So it's actually widely thought, like at the time and even now, that May Wong, just like she'd done before, totally upstaged Marlene Dietrich in this film. Although I haven't seen the whole film. I found it online. You can watch the whole film, but it was like an hour and 46 minutes. And I was like, I don't have time for that. Mm-hmm. Someday I'm going to watch it though. I'm going to share though a little, obviously that sexual chemistry, by the way, didn't help the whole lesbian rumors.
Yeah, if you're trying to cool it down, don't turn it up.
The fact that everybody in the fucking 20s was talking about their sexual chemistry, I think is pretty clear that they had it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play a little clip, though, from a documentary that talks about this role that she played, but also I think really encapsulates who she was as an actress in this era.
Okay.
What I think is very fascinating about that film is that I really do think she held her own against an acknowledged world-class diva.
She worked. I think the best word for May Wong is she earned her position. She earned it the hard way. That's why she survived as long as she did. And she came into a community. It wasn't striving, let's find a Chinese lady and make her a star. May Wong created a desire for Paramount to have a Chinese leading lady. She did it herself.
You're right. She's beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh. I love that idea, though, that she did it herself.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know they needed her. She made sure they knew.
Mm-hmm.
So this role that she played in the Shanghai Express, it did make her a lot more famous because she was alongside Marlene Dietrich, mm-hmm. who was then probably the most recognizable actress in the world. But also, over the years, May Wong had gotten some pretty negative press in China.
Okay.
Because she often played these roles that were like villains or sex workers or things like that, or overly sexual women. And that really went against the cultural norm in China. And this film really didn't help mm-hmm. because she was legitimately playing a sex worker alongside another sex worker, being very sexual.
Yeah.
And again, was not like they weren't the heroes of the film. And that just really cemented her in a lot of negative Chinese press. There was actually kind of like a tug of war that happened in the Chinese press about her because they wanted to acknowledge this woman who came from China, technically didn't come from China, but, mm-hmm. they believe like came from China, and like claim her because she's this famous actress. But at the same time, her portrayals of Chinese people were so negative that a lot of her films ended up not even being able to be shown in China.
What a terrible rock and a hard place to be stuck in between.
Yeah.
It's like you're just, she'd be more than willing to do better roles, but they're not there for her. So she's taking what she can because she's trying to live her dream. And then she's being judged on both sides where people are wanting her to portray something that she's not. And then the people that see that are mad at her because of what she's putting forward. It's like she can't win.
Yeah, there's no pleasing anybody, including herself.
Mm-hmm. Because she's not really doing what she truly wants to do.
Well, and things weren't getting easier for her either. Suddenly she was starting to be turned down for roles that were Chinese.
Okay.
An MGM exec once told her this. She was too Chinese to play a Chinese.
What the hell does that mean? That means that you look too much like
the character.
Like the character and your ethnicity, and we want to make you look more white.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, once again, she's like, fuck this place, and left for Britain.
Yeah, I would.
And she toured in some vaudeville shows, she made some films, and finally got an on-screen kiss with a white husband.
Ooh.
I was like, whoa, Britain was ahead of the time.
Yeah.
But she was still waiting for the role that would put her on the map and that would make her proud. So in the 1930s, one of the best-selling novels in the world was called The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. Have you ever heard of it?
Mm-mm.
I know about it because I think I read it in high school, but I don't really recall it very well. But Pearl S. Buck won the Nobel Prize for Literature for that book. and making her the first woman to do so.
Okay.
And Pearl S. Buck had grown up in China. She was a white woman, but she had grown up in China. I think her parents were missionaries, and she loved China and Chinese culture. And as I would say, as misguided as she was, at least she was not like just writing fantastical things out of her brain that weren't true.
Mm-hmm.
And for one of the very first times, she wrote this novel that was set in China, and it was about this Chinese family, and like all of them were just complex characters living out a family drama. And it was being optioned into a movie. And Anna May, even before it had been optioned into a film, she had wanted to play the part of the main character. The main character is a woman named Olan, and she wanted that part. And in fact, all of these like industry newspapers in Los Angeles, and even the Los Angeles Times, when it became news that they were going to make it into a movie, they all said, oh, this part is definitely meant for Anna May Wong. She's desperate, wants to play this fucking part. This is the part that was made for her. This is the part she's waited her whole life to play. However, the studio passed her over.
Oh my gosh, for who?
They had already cast a white man to play the lead role of the husband.
And there was no way.
So they weren't going to put her in the lead role of the woman. So instead, a white woman named Louise Rayner was the one who played Olan. And of course, there was this thing in film called the Hays Code of Conduct. And one of them in there was like, you cannot cast mixed race couples, period. So they offered her a part in the film, the part of a character named Lotus. Lotus was a deceitful girl who destroys the family and seduces the family's son.
Okay.
Anna May Wong was furious.
I'd be over it. I'd say no.
She refused.
Good.
And she told Irving Thalberg, who at the time was the most powerful man in the entire film industry, this: if you let me play Olan, I will be very glad. But you're asking me, with Chinese blood, to do the only unsympathetic role in the entire picture featuring an all-American cast portraying Chinese characters. She called him out.
Yeah.
Louise Rayner, the one who portrayed Olan, the role that was meant for Anna May Wong, went on to win the Best Actress Oscar for that role.
Oh, jeez. Oh, the burn. It burns.
In 1934, Anna May's father left the United States and returned to China. And he took some of her younger siblings with him, the ones that were not adults. And after the devastation of having lost this part, and her family is living in China, she decided that for the first time she was going to visit China. And she ended up, on her trip, she would write articles for American publications as she traveled, because they were very interested in hearing what she had to say about being in China.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chinese press, because of their history with her, alternated between treating her like royalty and slamming her for her everything, for the fact that she spoke in a Taishan dialect, which was very different from Cantonese, her lack of a husband, and her status as an independent woman. They didn't like any of that.
All dangerous things.
There was also a documentary crew that followed her around and filmed a lot of her interactions.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, what's really cool is that footage was later made into a documentary that aired on American television in the 50s.
Oh, that's really cool.
So I'm actually going to share a clip from the documentary that aired in the 50s. So this is going to be footage of her visit, and she's going to provide the narration on what's happening in it so that everybody at home can hear her voice, because her voice is not what I expected.
Yeah, it's really sexy.
It is it's sultry.
And now for the great adventure to see my father that I haven't seen for a long time. And we get there by train, bus, and foot. And there is our old pappy. And rearing up is Richard, our youngest brother, and my sister Ying. He is so delighted and beaming as he greets us. go to the village, and the people are curious and come from miles around to see what a movie star looks like. This is one of my favorite pictures of my father. He was so happy that day to be surrounded with his family from the west and the east. Although I've been to many, many places in the world, this first and only trip I made to China was the most meaningful.
That's really cool. It's shot really well.
It really is. What do you think about her style?
Oh, it's on point. I was like, that dress.
Oh, that dress.
Her silhouette is lovely.
I didn't show you the clip that came before that, but before that, there's like a close-up of her talking to the Chinese press, and her makeup is flawless. Her hair is flawless. She looks like this breezy, beautiful, ethereal woman. And I was like, oh my God, like the fact that she couldn't get leading roles, it was really frustrating because she was so captivating to look at. So when she came back to the US, oh, by the way, at this point in life, you can imagine that she's pretty fucking depressed.
Yeah.
Her family lives in China. She can't get the role she wants. One thing that I didn't put in here, but I read it in the New York Times. So I have a subscription to the New York Times, so I can search their archives.
Okay.
So I just typed her name in, and one of the things that came up was an article, and no one mentioned this anywhere else in any biography I read, but I found it. And it was that her younger sister, one day this is when her dad still lived in the States. They were all having like breakfast together. The sister got up to leave the table, and she went into the garage and she hanged herself.
Oh my gosh.
And they found her like an hour later when they went looking for her. And so like her sister is dead. Her parents like her mom is dead. Her dad moved back to China. You know, she has no one around. She can't get the role she wants. She lost the role of a lifetime. And it went to someone who didn't deserve it and who went on to win an Oscar. You can imagine that
life sucks right now.
So she's drinking a lot.
Oh, okay.
She's smoking a lot. She's drinking a lot. And it even had made it into some of the like Chinese press gossip. So she comes back to the States and she's feeling completely defeated. At that point, when you signed with the studio as an actor, you were required to do whatever your contract said. So she had a certain number of films she had to film no matter what. But she's fucking pissed. So she comes back and she says, I'm going to finish my contract, but I'm going to only do B movies. And B movies were these like terrible movies that they would shoot and film, whatever, really quickly to make a buck. And they were always terrible. And despite the fact that they weren't great films and they were often hated by reviewers, Anna May enjoyed doing them because for the first time in her career, she got the chance to play roles that weren't stereotypical. In a movie called Daughter of Shanghai, she actually got to be the heroine.
Oh, wow.
In fact, they rewrote the script so she could be. Anna was becoming also at this time more active in the Chinese American community. I don't know if it was because she went to China and saw what was happening, but something in her really decided that she needed to be more politically active. And imperialist Japan was becoming increasingly aggressive towards China. So she started auctioning off her costumes from her career and donating the money to support Chinese refugees who were escaping. She also starred in 2 anti-Japanese propaganda films and donated her salary to the United China Relief Fund.
Wow, she helped.
Yes. And Anna May all but left movies altogether in the 1940s and instead started doing real estate investments around LA and Santa Monica. In 1951, so now we're like so she's hardly done any films at all for years.
Yeah.
In 1951, there was a company called Dumont who made televisions, and they decided to create their own television network. Like, well, we put out TV, we're going to make TV. So they decided to create a network, and because they were not like the big like NBC, CBS, and then eventually ABC, these guys were like pulling their peanuts together to put together a network. They were putting things together that was like not like anything else on television. So they approached Anna May and they said, we want to give you a show.
A show?
Your own television show.
Wow.
So they gave her a television show. It was like a hour long, aired once a week. And it was called The Gallery of Madame Liu Song, which was her original birth name, right?
Oh, okay.
So she played the title character, and the title character was this woman who was an art dealer who becomes involved in mystery and intrigue and detective work. Like, it reminded me of, it was Jessica Fletcher. What was that?
Jessica Fletcher?
God, we just watched it. Abby and I watched all of the seasons available on Amazon Prime. They're terrible, but fun. But yeah, so Murder, She Wrote.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So that's what it reminds me of. Instead of a writer, it's an art dealer. Same thing. Mm-hmm. But the show obviously was canceled after only 10 episodes. And here's the funny thing is that whole network folded and nothing of that show remains. Some of the stuff from the network had been able to be kept, but not even a script is still in existence. And it's rumored that everything from that network was put on a barge and dumped into the Hudson River in New York.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. I feel
put it on a barge.
But the show did exist. It happened. And that meant that Anna May Wong was the first Asian American to have her own television show.
Wow.
It's the 50s. She's been drinking now for like 15 years. Her health is deteriorating. She even starts having internal hemorrhaging.
Oh, Jesus.
She was still appearing every once in a while on television shows. And in 1960, she received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And there's this really cool sculpture called the Gateway to Hollywood, and you enter through it to get to where all of the studios are. And it was made in like the 60s, I think, maybe later. But it's these 4 pillars, and each one of them is a different actress. And one of them is a Hispanic actress named Dolores Del Rio, which someday you should do her because I've never heard of her before.
Me neither, yeah.
Dorothy Dandridge, who is a black actress, and Mae West, who is white. And then the 4th one is Anna May Wong.
Oh, that's really cool.
Her last film role was in a movie called Portrait in Black, and even then, she could not escape stereotypes. The film's press release, so the film company, put out a press release, and they wanted to explain why she had taken such a long absence from movies. And so they said this. They said that her father had passed down a Chinese proverb to her, and it said, "Don't be photographed too much or you'll lose your soul."
Okay.
Which has also been attributed to Native Americans. I mean, it's just one of those like dumb, whatever.
Yeah.
So Anna May's last role was supposed to be in a film adaptation of a Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, but she had to turn it down because her health was failing. And she ended up dying. Anna May Wong died on February 3rd, 1961 at the age of 56.
Whoa, she's really young.
Yeah, she died of a heart attack with complications due to alcoholism. Many of the obituaries written after her death included that fucking quote from the film company that they sent out in that press release.
Wow.
Which is why I was pissed.
Mm-hmm.
Even in death, she couldn't escape
get away
it.
from it.
So despite falling into relative obscurity in the mid-20th century, Anna May Wong's impact on cinema, and especially Asian American portrayals, lives on. The Anna May Wong Award of Excellence is given out every year at the Asian American Arts Awards. She's also been the subject of many poems and songs, and had 2 biographies written about her in the 21st century. Her films also saw a resurgence in popularity when she was the center of some career retrospectives at the Museum of Modern Art and at the American Museum of the Moving Image. Just this week, on January 22nd, 2020, Anna May Wong was the featured Google Doodle.
Oh, I think I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why I did her.
Okay.
And that was because they were commemorating the 97th anniversary of her first major film, The Toll of the Sea. Anna May Wong was never given the opportunities she deserved, but her talent and star power lives on. She is electrifying on film. An incredibly captivating and beautiful actress. She draws your eye to her and it never leaves. We'll never know what she could have done in film had she been given the role she wanted and deserved. Nonetheless, she is an icon in film and fashion, especially for Asian Americans. I'm so sad for her that she never got that role.
Sad for her. Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff from Wikipedia because it was really well done, and I ended up pulling a lot of the sources that they went to. I went to those as well. I also used the National Women's History Museum. The New York Historical Society Museum and Library did an exhibition called Chinese American Exclusion Inclusion, and there was a piece on Anna May Wong. I used the piece from that documentary, those 2 clips. It was called Anna May Wong in Her Own Words by a filmmaker named Yuna Hong, and it was on the YouTube channel Women Make Movies. The British Film Institute, there was an article by Jasper Sharp called A Celebration of Anna May Wong in 6 Films. There was a really incredible article by a writer named Nicole Chung for Vulture magazine that was called The Search for Madame Liu Song, which was the TV show. Mm-hmm. This woman was like bound and determined to try to find something, but they couldn't.
She couldn't turn up anything.
And I also used her New York Times obit from 1961 and a New York Times article from 2004 called A Dragon Lady and a Quiet Cultural Warrior by Leslie Kamhi.
Wow, what a life.
I know that one was long. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I think she deserves it.
I wanted to have justice given to what she had done.
Yeah.
And, we're going to see, Abby and I are going to go see Margaret Cho soon. And I remember when Margaret Cho got her sitcom. She was the first Asian American to have a sitcom.
That show was awesome.
I know. It was very short-lived, but it was one of my favorite shows. I still remember everything about that show. I loved that show. Mm-hmm. And to find out that there was another person who came before her really blew my mind. I just didn't know.
Yeah. Even now, the amount of Asians that are represented in Hollywood, so small of a percentage.
Yeah, actually, I was going to include this, but I ended up not. I found an article that was when Lucy Liu was getting her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She talked about Anna May Wong and her legacy.
That's really cool.
In her speech.
So, the lady I'm talking about today is Masako Katsura.
I don't know her.
Neither did I. She is the First Lady of Billiards.
Ooh! I didn't even... Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Pool,
yeah. So little is known about Masako's early years. What is known about her is that she had 3 sisters and a brother. She was born in Tokyo, Japan in 1913.
Oh my gosh, that's way older than I thought this was going to be.
Yes.
That's like French cooking here.
I know. Her mother passed away when Masako was just 12 years old, and her father passed away shortly after as well. So she packed up her siblings and their oldest sister. They went to go live with her and her husband. Sister's name is lost to history, but the brother's name was Tomio Kabashi. Tomio and her sister owned a billiard parlor, and the couple owned and operated the business day and night. So the kids spent a lot of time in the billiards hall. At 13, Tomio started to teach her how to play. And she said she would practice at least 2 hours before the hall even opened. Huh. She was a little self-conscious about practicing in front of people, especially being a girl, and it's a grown-up space. And she kind of liked to do it when nobody was around.
Were billiard halls? Were they in Japan, like kind of like they are here? Like, was there alcohol and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was like basically a bar with lots of pool tables in it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, because I mean, that can get
Yeah, there's smoking, there's drinking. I'm sure some men and women are having some fun. And
yeah, I mean, as a kid, that would probably be pretty intimidating as well. Like just that sort of adult realm that you don't quite understand the rules of.
And also, like, you're kicking it there because you have to, because your sister and your brother-in-law are working to support you, so you're going to be there.
Yeah, you worked in the family business as a kid.
Yeah, my family owned a restaurant, and I never got paid, but I'd help with little things
either.
here and there, bussing tables or running in and out of the kitchen, helping out with a little bit of stuff here and there. But one thing I really remember is sitting there for hours because mom was working, dad was working, my sister was the hostess, my brother was a busboy, and I had to sit there because they're like, you're not going to be home by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to spend lots of time at my parents' business too. Yeah. But they didn't run a restaurant. They ran a shop, and it was really boring.
It was boring there too at times. So by 14 years old, she started working as a billiard attendant there. So like running things back and forth for people. I'm assuming like resetting tables, getting people stuff for chalk, or maybe going and getting a drink and giving it to them,
I wonder if back in, like, I don't know when the coin operated billiard tables were invented, but I was like, I wonder if there used to be someone who actually had to like ferry the collection of balls back and forth. In order to
billiard attendant, so I don't really know what that is, but I'm assuming you're doing little things here and there, so people can stay at their tables and continue their game. And also, I'm imagining they're paying to play there, so it's like golf. You want somebody there attending this person who's paying to play.
And I wonder also if there was like kind of an overseer situation. You know how like in casinos they always have somebody who's just wandering the floor and making sure your people aren't pulling shady shit,
and somebody had to keep score too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel like they were probably stopping cheaters because cheating is going to inevitably get caught, and then there's going to be a fight.
Especially in a pool hall.
Yes.
So while she was a billiard attendant, Tomio started teaching her daily about the fundamentals of various styles of playing. She took such a liking to the game that her sister actually brought one of the pool tables home for her. So that
they had a room big enough for a billiard table?
They were like, we know you like to play, but you can't be in the billiard hall longer than you're supposed to. You got to go home. So her sister put a table at home. And so she would actually play into like the wee hours of the night so that she could keep practicing, but she wasn't at the pool hall at least. She admitted that between the table at home and the time that she played at the hall, she was playing and practicing like trick plays and things like that for about 6 hours a day.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's so much time.
That's so much time. And did you know there's a difference between billiards and pool?
No.
Neither did I.
I mean, I think I don't know what the difference is. I think at some point somebody told me they were different. I was like, well, pitch posh, it's the same.
Well, so like pool, there's the pockets. There's all the balls that you set, and you've got your cue ball. So billiards is actually played on a table without pockets.
Well, where do the balls go?
Yeah. So it's actually not about sinking the ball. It's about a game of points. And it's played with only 3 balls.
No way.
Yeah. So what it is you gain points by hitting your ball, which what they call object balls. So you take your ball, you have to hit the other object ball, and then the object ball has to at least hit the sides of the tables 3 times. And then you get a certain amount of points. If it hits only twice, you get less once, so on and so forth. So this style of playing is called carom. And there's different, actually the style that they play in Japan of carom, there's 4 balls.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's basically about racking up the points, not about sinking the balls and clearing the table.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so I didn't know that that's billiards.
Well, I knew
I thought all billiards were pool.
Well, I know that in pool, there are games other than the one that we traditionally play, which is 8-ball. I know that there are other games that are about like, that's why on the pool tables there are all those little like triangles. Yeah, like the little diamonds. Markers. Like those are worth points. I don't know anything about that way of playing. I've literally only played 8-ball.
You're just the solids and stripes.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
And that I'm not good at. So it's like, why would I bother learning the others?
Yeah, we actually played a lot of pool growing up. It was
I did too, because I spent a lot of time in a bar with my dad.
And Amanda just got to see me and my siblings all get together and play pool. And it's one thing, whenever we're together, we'll find a place to go play pool.
Yeah, that was really fun. I was really glad to meet them finally.
So Masako began playing with the men who came to the pool hall. They saw her as, this little girl, and they thought it'd be fun to watch her lose, like beat her. But actually, Masako was so good, she was beating them left and right. Her brother-in-law encouraged her at the age of 15 to compete in, and actually billiards was so popular, there was a women's billiards competition. So he encouraged her to compete in this women's straight rail championship, which she won at 15 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah. This win would make Masako the first professional female billiards player in all of Japan and the world at that age. Yeah.
The age of 15. And what year is it?
The age of 15. So she's born in 1915.
So it's 1930.
1930.
Wow, that's early.
Soon after that, she began touring Japan, China, and what is now present-day Taiwan. And her sister came with her as a chaperone because her sister's like, you're not going alone to do a pool tour.
Good job, sister.
And actually, too, her sister was actually an accomplished player as well. And so her sister started competing, too. She quickly became a top flight billiards star, ranking up 3 second-place finishes in the Japanese 3-cushion championship, which is where you have to hit the object ball 3 times.
Okay.
They call it a 3-cushion. She was playing against men, too, which was not really seen very often. And she became a trick shot champion. And one time she was raking up probably about 10,000 points a game.
What was the average?
A normal game is in the hundreds.
Oh.
Yeah. So she was doing very well. She was also hired to play billiards exhibitions.
You still said that wrong.
I don't care. That's the way I say it. So pushing ahead a little bit through to the 1940s, of course, World War II is happening, and it's having a huge effect on the relationship between Japan and other countries.
Yeah.
Around this time, Masako met a man named Vernon Greenleaf. He was an American serviceman stationed at the Tokyo Air Base. One night, he's out playing pool with his friends, and Masako walks in, and she had hired herself a coach. And his name was Kenya Matsuyasuma. He was a Japanese billiards superstar. He was the guy. And he saw that she was very talented, so he kind of took her under his wing. Matsuyama asked this group of men that Vernon was with if they could, all the tables were taken, so he asked them, can we use this table? She needs to practice. And he's like, and hey, maybe humor her, let her practice with you guys. Maybe you guys will give her a run for her money or something. Kind of made it seem like she wasn't as good as she was.
This is what we were talking about with Eastside the other night. Talking about swindling people.
It's called hustling.
Hustle it.
So then she's like, yeah, can you guys let me play at your table? And they're like, oh yeah, little lady, here's how you can, put the chalk on the cue.
Yeah, here's how you line up a ball.
Exactly. So of course, Vernon volunteers to play her. She blows him out of the water, and she leaves these guys with their jaws on the floor, and she's packing up her stuff. He runs after her and asks her, please, can you teach me how to play?
I thought you were going to say that he ran after her and was like, please go out with me. And I was going to be like, well, that's an interesting tactic.
He said, can you please teach me how to play? So she started giving him lessons, and through the lessons, they fell in love.
Of course they did.
So she married Vernon in 1950.
And so she became Greenleaf?
Yeah. Greenleaf. That's quite a name. Vernon
It really
Greenleaf.
is.
So shortly after they were married, Vernon, who was, like I said, he was in the Navy, he gets called back to the States. So he was stationed in San Francisco. And so Masako packs her bags and she heads over to the U.S. where she's never been before.
I was wondering also, was that weird for them?
They said that they had his family did not want him to marry her.
Well, I can imagine at the time there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment.
They were the enemy.
Yeah.
And so, it was a big step for both of them to get married and have a relationship.
Wow.
It didn't say much about her family.
I mean, I was going to say there was also anti-Western sentiment in
and then
Japan.
She's going to go to America.
Oh,
too.
man. Those two are like definite star-crossed lovers situation.
Yeah. So her playing career could have ended with that move, but Matsuyama, who was internationally known, was speaking far and wide about this girl and what an amazing player she is.
Oh, that was the coach.
Yes, her coach. And the American billiards scene at the time was really popular. So an American billiards champion and pool hall owner in San Francisco named Wilbur Cochran had heard of Masako, and he had a son that was actually stationed overseas in Japan at the time. So before she moved to the U.S., he asked his son to go check her out and see if she was as good as people had been saying she was. And he told his father this, "Dad, I think she's even better than you." He said, "She is the most marvelous thing I've ever seen. She's liable to beat anybody, even Willie Hoppy. I could not see any weak spots. She's going to give a lot of people a lot of fits." Like, he was like, she's fucking awesome.
He's really talking her up.
Yeah, and Willie Hoppy was like a 50-time world champion billiards player. So Cochran wants to invite her to play when she gets to San Francisco. Surprisingly, nobody is upset that he invites her to play.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought like maybe there might be some pushback, or the fact that she's a woman, the fact that she's Japanese.
Yeah,
but
she
it
doesn't speak English, really.
She doesn't speak English
Right?
very well at all, yeah. And her husband knows some Japanese, like enough that they can communicate, but very little.
I'm always so curious about those kinds of relationships. Like,
how do you fight? That's what I want to know. How do you fight?
I was thinking more along the lines of, how do you fall in love with someone you can't communicate with? Like,
right?
What is your whole relationship based on? Sex?
Sex.
Well, I mean, that's enough, maybe.
Yeah.
For some folks, until the fighting happens.
Isn't it
So
funny?
maybe
That's
it's
my first
perfect.
sentiment. How do you fight with them if you can't yell at them and communicate what you're feeling?
How do you fight with them?
Yeah. So Cochran invites her to play in the world's 3-cushion billiards championship in 1953. Masako becomes the first woman ever to be invited to play in a world's billiards competition. And the game created quite a stir, and tickets sold out like immediately. People wanted to see this girl play. And literally in my notes, it says, "Insert racist fetishism here." Because one of the, and this made me very uncomfortable, one of the advertising gimmicks they used, Cochran's wife was like, "Let's put her in a kimono." Yeah. And so they dressed her up. I think his wife even like made her a costume. And they were like, "Look at this girl from the East." And they, yeah. And I really don't, especially how men fetishize Asian women.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And so for that to be a tactic that they use when she barely gets to the States, it's like, fuck off.
It reminds me, though, of Yayoi Kusama trying to play on that, to push that.
Yeah.
By doing that whole experimental film thing where she put the kimono on, but then had the like fake parasol.
Yeah.
With fake leaves on it, and then walking around New York like that. Like, she was trying to make a statement about our country's obsession with fetishizing Asian culture and Asian women, but getting it wrong. And the fact that they made her a costume is indicative of that same problem that she was sort of railing against at the same time, really. It's like the early 60s when Yayoi Kusama did that.
And I feel like you're trying to sell tickets to this event. She is undeniably a talented player. I think they didn't have to do that. No,
they could have talked about, you have to see this girl play.
And people would want to see.
Instead of, you have to see this pretty little Japanese girl play. Like, there's a big fucking difference there.
Yeah.
And one is gross. The other one isn't.
So that's why I just put it in there. I was like, I'll briefly hit on that. So she goes on to compete. There's 10 people that are competing in this competition. She's going against the defending champion, William Hoppy. one of the greatest billiards player in the world. He had, so I think I had mentioned, he had accumulated 51 world titles.
Oh.
Yeah. And he was playing Masako. It was like one of his last games because he was starting to kind of go into retirement. So that was also a big deal too. It's like this new girl coming on the scene playing one of the oldest and best players.
Outgoing world champion.
Yeah. He ended up beating Masako only 52-30, but said it was some of the most brilliant billiards playing and strategy he had ever played in his life. The 10 players that were competing for the world championship, Masako ended up being 7th. She beat a player named Ray Kilgorn, who was supposed to be the next William Hoppe. Like he was this hotshot, up and coming, like supposed to be the new kid in town, and she kicked his ass. And she actually played against her coach too, Matsuyama. And Matsuyama won over her. So I thought that'd be kind of fun to beat your own coach, but
yeah. But I think there would also be some kind of weird dynamic there, right? Like he knows every move you're going to make because he showed you to make that. And he knows how you're going to play because he coaches you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, obviously he's going to win. He knows all their tricks.
She continued to be invited to the World's Championship, and she ended up placing 5th at another one and 4th at another one. So she's kind of
I like that it's not segregated by gender.
Yeah.
Like it's just you got 7th place.
And there had been another woman that had been invited to play in a billiards championship, but the only thing that was different from her was that this is a world's championship and no woman had been invited to play there.
Oh, I see.
So she continued to play exhibition matches and even got invited to be on TV. She was on ABC's You Asked For It and CBS's What's My Line.
Yeah, I know both of those.
Yeah, and she was demonstrating trick shots and things like that. Around the late 60s, Masako kind of disappears from the billiards world and out of the spotlight. And a couple years later, Vernon passes away. I think Vernon got sick.
Oh, and so she like left to go take care of him?
Yeah. He died. He was only in his mid-50s.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I mean, he had to have gotten sick.
Well, and if he was in Japan at the time they dropped the bomb,
who knows?
You know, probably was exposed to some shit.
So she disappears completely after he dies. Randomly, she pops up one more time in 1976 at the Palace Billiards Hall. She came in, she played one game, ran 100 points straight. She put the cue down and she just left. And everybody was like in shock. They're like, who's this woman? And they're like, oh my gosh, it's her. And she just played this game and then she walked out the door. Yeah.
Wow. That's very like cinematic.
Yeah. Like just saying goodbye, maybe. That same year in 1976, the Women's Professional Billiards Association was established, and Masako was one of the first people that they inducted into their Hall of Fame. In the early 90s, she decided to move back to Japan. She moved in with her sister, and she lived a very quiet, private life until she passed away in 1995.
Wow.
Yeah.
I am so stoked that you did something that I would have never thought about.
I was kind of cued from this weekend. My son was playing darts, and I was originally going to look for like maybe a female dart championship, and then she popped up, and her story was so interesting, just how she was in and she was famous, and then she was just out. So
yeah, she's disappeared like into thin air.
Yeah.
Did she ever have children or anything?
No, her and Vernon never had any kids, and she never remarried.
Oh, I forgot to mention that Gaston worked in her restaurants.
Oh, yeah. What happened to Gaston?
Gaston worked in her restaurants. And I think in fact, one little anecdote was like the reason she started the second restaurant was to get away from him.
Oh, jeez.
But in any case, that was the only child she ever had. And as far as I know, never married or anything like that. So Gaston was her whole family. But Gaston went on to like continue being a chef, had children of his own. And,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, she never had any children. I got my information from flashback.com, from gamestable.com. That's where I learned a little bit about billiards and pool, and that I didn't know much about it at all. deviantwomenpodcast.com. This is a podcast out of Australia. It's
Ooh.
2 women. It's very funny, and I got a lot of information off of that podcast, and I would recommend to go check it out.
We should definitely link to them in our Instagram stories so people can check them out.
Yeah. Aussie.com, and I got some from Wikipedia. And yeah, I had no idea who this woman was, and I'm so excited to share her photos because she is, we were talking about earlier, grace and poise. She is just the epitome of that. She's in this beautiful, classy outfit, and she's just leaning over the table. In one of them, she's got her foot up, and she's got these gorgeous shoes on. I'm just like, this girl is fly.
That's great.
It's quite a cool picture.
Well, I can't wait to see the pictures on Instagram. So thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of I Don't Know Her. We hope you're enjoying it. It is almost our anniversary. In fact, by the time this is posted, it will have been our 1-year anniversary as a show. So we have many more things to come in 2020, and we're excited that you're along for the ride. Mm-hmm. And we also have some swag to be given out.
Yep.
And perhaps more to be produced later this year.
And thanks for sticking with us so long. We really do appreciate it.
And thank you to Lucas McIntyre, our lovely editor. And to bomb-ass chick, Jennifer Finch.
Jennifer Finch.
Of L7 for our amazing theme music, Shirley, from L7's Hungry for Stink album.
All right, guys.
Till next time.